And when I realized that the old couple made it faster than me to the whole length of the alley, I was like, I'll go check the doctor. And so the doctor, well, she sent me immediately to do blood samples, and basically the next day she called me. She was very direct and said, Mr. Mastani, I have a big news for you. Tonight you're sleeping at hospital. People tell me all the time, since the first time I fell ill, they see me alive and they say, wow, you're super strong. And I'm going to quote Emma because she said it on her stream concerning her transition. It's when you're faced with great challenges that you find the strength in you. I have the intimate conviction that anyone who wants to, with, I'll say, a decent state of health. I'm not saying someone who's already plague-ridden with all sorts of diseases, but someone who is in normal health before falling ill and wants to go to survive cancer, you can.
Well, Mastani, welcome over to the podcast. I'm still trying to figure out, I know your name from possibly 2 or 3 different streams, and I think the first one was possibly no word count. Is that correct? Or you're like, no, never been on his stream?
Nah, never been on his stream. I've been in Emma's.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I know you.
Where else do I remember seeing you? I don't remember seeing you in yours I've been a few times.
Okay. So, but yeah, up until you messaged me at the weekend, your story is completely, I just didn't know anything about it. And so I'm very much looking forward to learning along with the audience today. So the headline for you is, I survived leukemia twice. That was my wording, slightly more possibly cocky than you might say. I don't know. Well,
it's actually quite accurate, because if I hadn't received any kind of medical treatments, I would actually be dead twice already.
Yeah.
So first time I fell ill was, today I'm 30. I was 24 just a few days before my birthday. And I had been kind of down so the symptoms for leukemia, they manifest for everyone in different ways. So my experience is not the whole medical, if you have the same symptoms as me, it's probably not leukemia. I hope for you it's not leukemia. But for me, it manifested by a lack of appetite, which led to, logically in my mind, lack of energy, because I'm just eating half of what I usually eat and less and less. But that was also something that happens to me when I'm stressed. And at work, I was under heavy stress for a while. So for me, it was okay, I'm eating less for quite a few months while working a lot. Now there's summer. I'm still kind of recuperating. So I wasn't really surprised to be not eating much. And I had planned some holidays outside of France. And when a couple with walking sticks, a couple of old people with walking sticks, I was in Vienna, coming back from Schönbrunn Castle. There's a huge alley. And when I realized that the old couple made it faster than me to the whole length of the alley, I was like, I'll go check the doctor.
Yeah.
And so the doctor, well, she sent me immediately to do blood samples, and basically the next day she called me. She was very direct and said, Mr. Mastani, I have a big news for you. Tonight you're sleeping at hospital.
Wow.
I was getting on it that there was something coming up that might be a bit heavy, because it had been going on for months now. So I was expecting that, but I wasn't expecting to enter hospital on October 12th and leaving it around November 30th.
Wow.
So my mom was my mom's living in the same town as me. She was kind enough to drive me to hospital. And basically what I got was leukemia. They did a few more analysis and samples of my marrow just to confirm that it was leukemia. But from the blood test results, it was already clear that it was that. Mm-hmm. Leukemia is a cancer. It took me ages to admit it. like literally ages. For the first time I was ill, I was treated, I won't say nonstop, but a lot for 6 to 7 months, including 2 full months in isolation room, safe room, I don't know, medically germ-free room, because to cure leukemia is your marrow stops producing white blood cells, and your white blood cells are do 2 things. One, they remember your past illnesses, so you can react faster when you have, for example, a cold or something like that.
Yep.
And 2, they produce the white blood cells to actually go and fight the infections. So your immune memory is not stored in your marrow, but your marrow produces the elements needed to remember what you fought in the past.
Yeah.
And so when your marrow dysfunctions, you do what President Trump suggested for COVID, and you inject medical grade desktop in your veins.
So it does have uses then.
Yes, except it's medical grade, and it made me absolutely mad when I heard the statement, but it marked people's minds enough, or at least mine enough, to make people get the image of what it is, because that's exactly what it is. My father died from a cancer. When I felt ill, I didn't know what leukemia was. My mom, who has formation as a nurse, I pulled the strings from her nose, and I don't know if this English expression, but just made her spit it out what she suspected it was.
Yeah.
So when the doctor said, "We suspect you have leukemia," I was like laid back in bed and was yeah, okay, I was told so.
Just very matter of fact.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I was told it could be. I had no idea. Then I looked it up and I stressed and panicked and things like that. But at first I was very not stressed because I didn't know what it was. Then I looked it up, and there are several forms of leukemia, but basically mine is the one that kids would get, basically up to their teens. Mm-hmm. So 24, I was way past the time, but it's apparently becoming more and more common. So, and the survival rates are extremely high. So I wasn't exactly afraid of not curing the first time.
Yeah.
My big fears, very big fears, was losing my physical abilities, mm-hmm. losing my mental abilities. Because chemotherapy, especially in leukemia, is very heavy, very, very heavy treatment. Your body takes over 6 months to fully evacuate the product. So once you're injected, you need 6 months for the product to be fully out of your system and not affecting you anymore. Mm-hmm. So right now, about this week, I finished evacuating the last chemo products I got from my second leukemia. And I took example as soon as I learned that I would be in hospital for weeks and months. I set up a messenger because my dad, when he was ill, he fought cancer and died from it, but it was already another form of cancer. It was already, I won't say terminal, but he knew he had no way out of it.
Yeah.
But I had seen my father fight cancer for several years, knowing that he was doomed. So for me, when I was told, you have cancer and it's curable, in my mind, I decided, I made a decision at one point, and I said, I want to keep on moving forward, and I want to laugh about it. Admitted, I never laughed much about it.
Well, I like the fact that was your attitude going in, at least.
Yeah, well, at first it was like, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid because I don't know what it is. Then I knew what it is, and I looked it up, and I saw quickly that it was curable. Mm-hmm. I had very reasonable chances of getting out. That never stopped me from regularly being put under antidepressant meds, because you still have dark thoughts when a treatment goes and just knocks you out.
Yeah.
usual weight is about 80 kilos. I don't know how that much is in pounds, but just like normal.
176.
I'll trust you on that. At the worst point, the first time, I fell down to 60 kilos. So without being looking like a Somalian underfed person, it was kind of looking like that. Not that extreme, but I could see my stomach, you could see my rib cages, my legs were just sticks. I do volleyball and my shoulders had shrank. But each time I was saying, well, I made this decision once to stay alive and to continue, and I want to keep on visiting the European capitals. I want to keep on living. I'm just 24, 25 when I was put into the sterile room. And I want to live. And I was lucky. The first time I was extremely lucky because in my home, I was hospitalized in my hometown. Mm-hmm. And through the messenger, I got an amazing amount of returns and support. So people asking for news, people sharing the news beyond just the 100 or so people I was sharing news through messenger. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I got random text saying from numbers unknown saying, hey, it's X person and I heard what's happening to you and I hope you're doing better. And that's one thing. Well, one of the 4 things that I told people when I fell ill again, when they were like, you're ill again, what can we do for you? 1, ask for news if I don't give news. I may not be in a mindset or able or have the energy to, but having people worry for me is amazing. 2, keep on living your own lives because I'm not the center of the universe and you have your own lives. You have the right to be happy.
Yeah.
3, go give your blood, register on the marrow donator registers. And 4, share the word about that around you. Mm. Because for me, knowing that the world kept on going on, receiving news from family about my nephew, like growing up and doing new things and just, he wasn't up to walking, but just pressing buttons, reacting to his environment, receiving news from my sister from that. It's all these little things and people coming to visit me. When I had the chance of people coming to visit me, it was exhausting, but mentally seeing someone who is not a nurse and not a doctor, that just changed my life.
Yeah.
The second time I was hospitalized a bit further away from where I live because when the leukemia came back, I needed to be transplanted, and there are only certain hospitals who have the necessary accreditations to do that. And so I had way less visits and way less support. Not from the messenger still worked. I still had an amazing online community because I had started streaming in between. It's kind of very light, but just up there, sorry. You have it's Kudo board that one of my communities sent me with. There's over 70 messages on it, and I don't know how many times I read it for inspiration and motivation and feel good. And so people tell me all the time, since the first time I fell ill, they see me alive and they say, wow, you're super strong. And I'm going to quote Emma because she said it on her stream concerning her transition. It's when you're faced with great challenges that you find the strength in you. I have the intimate conviction that anyone who wants to, with, I'll say, a decent state of health. I'm not saying someone who's already plague-ridden with all sorts of diseases, but someone who is in normal health before falling ill and wants to go to survive cancer, you can. It is taxing. It requires, I don't know how many times I cried in my pillows, yelled at them. But if you want to live and you make that conscious decision that I want to live, I want to experience more things, I want to keep on streaming, I want to keep on visiting Europe, I want to, who knows, what if your project is to found a family, to build an empire, you find your reason, you cling on to them, and most cancers can be survived. And that's how I powered through. Although I don't like the power through, because for me it was just, since I made that decision in 2017, saying in 2017, I'm going to survive leukemia. It was a big blow when it said, leukemia's back, you're going back to hospital. Between May and October 2021, which was the second time I was treated for leukemia, I spent over 5 months in a sterile room, which is more or less 20 square meters with one bed, the bathroom, toilet. You have a window, but you can't open it because you have the chemios and radiotherapy that I got at the time as well. They nuke your marrow and they nuke your white blood cells. So any germ that would come in, you would just catch it instantly and have no way to defend yourself against it. Right now I'm fighting a diarrhea virus, like babies catch that. Babies catch diarrhea, and I've been fighting that virus for almost a month now because my body just doesn't know what a virus is anymore.
Yeah.
So that's for me the hardest part in dealing with my illness, because I have total confidence in my doctors and the nurses when they being stuck in a room for over a month. The longest I was 40 days. 40 days in a bed with a tube catheter in French, the thing they used to inject you with products. Actually, mine was directly to the heart through my neck here, directly to the arterial. Like one thing I could stand up a bit more, and it was like plugged in here, and just a tube that went down through my arteria to my heart. Mm-hmm. Had it on right, left, depending on infections and things like that. And so plugged to that 24/7 with machines beeping all the time, because they dose exactly how much hydration they give you, how much of each medicine they give you. The second time I was healed in Grenoble, in France, and it was the railing on which all the pouches of chemios and things was attached was actually hanging from the ceiling and was moving around the bed. And in the room I had my bed, an apartment bike to try and do exercise. I'll admit I never did enough, or almost not at all, because I was just completely wiped out.
Yeah.
And plus the bathroom, and that was about it. And anyone who wanted to come visit me, I was limited to 2 visitors max per day. They could stay as long as they wanted, but basically after 2 hours, I was just out of energy, whatever happened.
And were they the other side of a screen from you?
No, they were the whole service in which I was, the whole hallway was considered not sterile, but safe enough. So people would come in, put on a doctor's blues, something to cover their hair, on their shoes, disinfection of hands about 4 or 5 times before entering the room. Forbidden to touch me or anything that I would touch without first disinfecting hands and disinfecting the thing afterwards. Mm-hmm. Every day there would be a crew that would come to my room, change the bed sheets, clean the floor, disinfecting it, disinfect the walls. The TV got the same treatment, like every 2 days. They would be like wiping off any form of dust or anything like that. And to avoid anything coming in when you open the door, the room was kept in slight overpressure.
Okay.
So it wasn't noticeable, but there was a constant ventilation system. Imagine a fan running softly
Yep.
24/7. And to make sure that I was fine even during the night, because since you have no immune system, any infection will just kick off, and in 2 hours you can just spike in fever or anything like that. Every 4 hours, including at night, I'd have a nurse come up and check my tension, my temperature, in a way that you just can't sleep. You can't just stay asleep while they control. So that's part of the mentally taxing things. When I came out, my first thing is like, I'm gonna be able to sleep 8 hours straight.
So
So
can we just jump back a second, because we're talking about the second time already.
Yeah.
What I'm interested to know is between. So obviously we said the second time was 2021, so it was last year.
yeah,
And the first time was 2017.
yeah, 2017 to 2018.
So well, what did you? When you said obviously that you were the fears were like losing your physical abilities, losing your mental abilities. In the first time when you were in hospital, or during with the illness that first time, I take it was like a lot. Did a lot of that happen? Like, what was the experience there?
Yeah, basically, physically I fell. Well, falling to 60 kilos, you need to rebuild back up after that. I play volleyball, and I was glad to go participate. Each time I was allowed, I would rush back to my team and start like the warm up with them. But I'd be like playing 2 minutes and then sitting 10 next to my water bottle on the side, like everything's fine, everything's fine. And when the warm up is done, basically that would be the whole training for me.
Yeah.
Mentally, I felt it because the games I played grand strategy games. I was still able to play them, but I would lower the speed to the minimum and be pausing them all the time. I play Europa and Universalis a lot. Generally, I'm on between speed 2 and speed 3, very few pauses. Each time I got ill, I fell down back to speed 1 and pausing more than I needed to. Well, more than I needed to. More than usual. I was like, I should have done that like 2 years ago in game. Why didn't I do it? So nothing catastrophic, but even reading a book even became hard. I love reading, but concentrating on a book that I didn't know of actually made me extremely tired. And people like, but don't you want like an electronic reading tablet, because you can't bring any paper in, because paper is a dust nest. So the only things I was allowed was my cell phone, my iPad, my consoles. God bless my consoles. The first time I played through Breath of the Wild, and I was hunting Koroks, and I reached 650 Koroks. Because that's just about all my mental ability was, because if I needed to pause, I would just turn off the console and done.
Yeah.
And it came back slowly. Once I was done with the first 6 to 7 months, I got another form of chemotherapy, an oral chemotherapy, which was, in comparison, super lightly dosed to what I was having in hospital. It was like every day 1/100th of the doses that I got over one day. So very little and very spread out.
Yeah.
So I quickly noticed that energy-wise, I was getting back to normal. It still took time mentally to get the brain back in track, but when I first fell ill, I used to work as an accountant in a small accountancy firm, and I knew exactly what at the time I fell ill, what the work was that had to be done at work. And I was like, no, I'm under cortisone. I'm fine. I'm just sleeping 4 hours per night. Give me a laptop. Bring me some papers until I get into the sterile room.
Yeah.
Give me work. And one of my only wishes was to actually get back to work, get back to taking care of my customers, taking care of getting back to a normal life. One book that people recommended to me, and that I would recommend to anyone who wants to have an idea of what it is like to try and keep a normal life while having leukemia or marrow-related cancer, is a book by a French singer called, of course I forgot his name, Mathias Malzieu, there you go, called The Diary of a Vampire in Pajamas. He had exactly, he didn't have a leukemia, he had, his marrow just stopped working from one day to another, just said, stop, I give up. And the treatments he went through are actually quite similar to mine, with chemotherapy, and it ended with a marrow transplant. And I was lucky enough to actually get to meet him when he came over to my town to promote one of his books. And during his entire book, so it's really written like a diary of X of October, I had this, I met that person, and he describes it with very, at least in French, very poetical terms, because he's a singer, he's an artist, and for him, the most important part for him to stay sane was keep on being myself, keep on being himself. And it took me a lot of time to actually decide that, yeah, actually that's what I need to survive. I need to stay myself. So I need to keep on playing video games. I need to keep on taking news of people when I feel like it. And I want to get back to volleyball.
Yeah. We're touching on the volleyball a second. You already mentioned it, and it's something I kind of just want to go back to, which is, you said, when you went back to it, you had to go and do the warm up for a few minutes and then sit down for 10 minutes, and that would be kind of how things were. How did you? A very big recurring theme that I speak to people about on a very regular basis is when someone's achieved a certain level at something and then they get an injury or they get a setback and they have to start over. And to a lot of people, starting over, even though you've got muscle memory and even though you've got experience, starting over is often harder for a lot of people because we don't judge like the milestones, we judge against before. When you first learn in volleyball for the first time, you don't know what you're doing with the ball, and then you get better and you get stronger, you get faster, whatever. Then when you come back to it, you've now got, okay, but this is what I was like before leukemia. Was there a lot of that going on? And if so, how did you overcome it?
There still is. I'm always very critical of myself when I train. The rest of my team say, stop pesting against yourself. But no, I know I used to be able to do that. I should be able to be getting to it. So I still have in my mind this is what I used to be able to do. I know it will come back over time, but I still have this possibly a bit idealized me saying, yeah, this is how I was. This is where I can get back to. Mm-hmm. But I was lucky. First time when I came back, and now when I'm going to get back with my team in September next season, my role on the team, the position I'm exactly going to occupy is shifting slightly. So there's also the whole learning the specifics of my new position that helped me and are going to help me. Before we used to have just two setters and 4 attackers. Mm-hmm. And when I came back, we had decided to change slightly to just 1 setter, which swapped quite a few things around inside the team. So there was learning the new positions. And so I didn't get that much of a backlash of this is what I used to be able to do because I was playing in a new position. And so that I was shared between the ideal me that I knew before and I want to get back to that, and this is what my position is the role that my position is supposed to fill.
Yeah.
And so with it's like 2 balloons pulling up, I managed to get back to something satisfying for me.
Okay. So you got kind of the all clear after the first round of and the chemo, and then obviously you said you're still on that kind of daily but lower dosage.
For 2 years basically after the end.
So was there a point at which they were like, okay, that's it, cancer free, after the first time?
Yeah, well, you can't cancer. You're never 100% sure it's gone away.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. The doctors say. Basically, they told me we'll never be able to tell you you're cured.
Yeah.
But the more time goes by between the end of your treatments and whatever today is, the fewer the chances are that you will catch it again. And actually, May 2nd, which was the diagnosis of my relapse, was 1 year almost day to day after the end of my oral chemo.
Right. So with the second time round, obviously you said you had a period of several months the first time round where the energy levels were low, the appetite was low. This time round, were you kind of more acutely aware of what was going on in your body? Were you more did you notice those things quicker? What was it that kind of led you back to, or was it just a routine check as part of your ongoing treatment?
It was still routine checks because I had my blood sample once a month. At first it was every week, and then it was every 2 weeks, and then blah, blah. And we were spacing it out to once every month, and about to go to once every 3 months if the one in April had gone, if the one in May had gone fine. My doctor was going to say, we're going to just check once every 3 months. And basically it was, in French accountancy firms, the period from January to May is a very stressful period. So again, when in April, which is the most heated period, again, lacking appetite, lacking energy. Plus I was unsatisfied with my job, but so many reasons to be extremely stressed and to eat less So when I went into the place to get my blood sample, then I see the nurse that's always there on Mondays and with who I chat, and says yeah, don't worry, it's just a routine. Yeah, I'm a bit tired. Everything will be fine, but kind of forgot that my appointment with the doctor is tomorrow. So could you please speed up the analysis a bit just so they have it in time? Mm-hmm. And she was like, yeah, sure. So she was the first one to know before the doctors, before everyone, that something somewhere had gone terribly wrong again. But for me, it was I've been very stressed for 4 months. I am quitting my job. So I have plenty of reasons to be tired. So no, I didn't learn anything from the first time of.
Have any of your doctors ever talked about the link between stress and the disease?
Yes and no. They never said stress is the cause of the disease, because you can't pinpoint stress equals cancer. There's no,
because otherwise every single one of us would have cancer.
Yeah.
When it comes to mental health, the only thing that unifies all of us is stress.
Yeah. So you can't pinpoint and say stress gave you cancer.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I did it. My dad was extremely stressed when he caught his cancer. I was extremely stressed when I caught cancer the first time. I was extremely stressed when I relapsed. Yeah.
Well, it's just I'm currently listening to an audio book called "When the Body Says No" by Dr. Gabor Mate, and it is all about the mind-body connection. And it's not, and for once, it's actually a medical doctor writing it rather than the spiritualist. It's it's fascinating the number of cases where one of the big findings on there actually is people that don't have an actual outlet for their emotions. It's like they push their emotions to one side. It's like, oh, I've just got to get on with this or whatever it might be, and we just keep on.
Yeah, I'm very good at bottling up emotions. I'm terrifyingly good at that.
Terrifyingly. So, okay, What was it like hearing that the second time? So what did the nurse? Or was it the nurse that gave you that news? Was it the doctor the next day?
No, it was the doctor. Nurses in France aren't allowed to establish a diagnosis.
Right.
So the phone call came from my doctor. I was persuaded it was like 2 days after, and she was like, "Can we advance the thing by 24 hours?" I was like, "Wait, 24 hours? But it was tomorrow. Sure. I mean, well, since I had just quit my job, I was unemployed, and so sure, I can totally schedule 24 hours earlier." And she was always, I always appreciated her because she was always extremely direct when she had something to say. I don't like when there's a fact and people just like, and yes, and maybe, and possibly, and hopefully. It's just bring the news on to me. Just hit me with it. And so we had she told me the news. It was a big blow. I won't lie. It was a huge blow on my morale, because for me, my oral chemio that I had taken for 2 years, I noticed when I stopped it that I still gained a little bit more of mental energy, physical prowess.
Yeah.
But it was minor, but it's still minor but noticeable. And it was like, but from the moment I was done with the heavy treatments and there wasn't any trace of leukemia back in my blood, for me it was done. Mentally in my head, obviously I couldn't say cured. Obviously I was technically medically still considered ill as long as the 2-year chemio plan hasn't been gone through.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, I was done. Leukemia is done. I just have to consolidate and just get back to a normal life and things will be fine. So in my mind, I had been clear of cancer for the past 3 years. Yeah. So it's like, you've been doing better for 3 years and now back to square zero. So I called my mom. I called the rest of my family to tell them orally before reviving a messenger that had been asleep for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a big moral setback, saying I have to go back to square one. But at the same time, I had an inkling of an idea of what I was going to have to go through. I already knew what a sterile quarter was. I already knew how to prepare for it. I already knew where I was going to go to, the hospital I was going to go to, although I had never visited it. The doctor was able to tell me, yeah, they'll be calling you between X and X day because I already booked a room in emergency for you, and this is how they'll transport you. And when I know what's going to happen to me, it's very soothing soothing may not be the best word, but it's comforting.
Yeah.
Comforting to know what's going to happen. So it was a big blow, but it was also a comfort to know that things were being handled. I had total trust in both the nurses and the doctors in hometown. And I was absolutely sure that when my doctor told me you're going to be followed in this service in Grenoble, 5th floor, section C, I knew that there I would be well taken care of as well.
Yeah.
And same thing happened. I'm still visiting Grenoble every week for checkups and make sure my new marrow is adapting to my body. Because the second time the first time was just chemios to reset your marrow, basically until we don't find any more leukemia cells, which is a way, way, way lighter treatment than the one I got the second time.
Mm-hmm.
A marrow transplant requires a lot more because you're not just putting desktop to reboot your marrow. I had 3 reboots of my marrow through chemio, and 2 series of radiotherapy to actually burn the marrow in my bones. And that was about the worst.
So that's even just hearing that sounds horrendous. I don't know how going through it would even remotely be.
Well, at the point at which I was, it was either I get the marrow transplant and the new marrow knows how to identify a leukemia cell and blasts it for me, or I can come back for chemo every X years. Don't know how long, but I'll never get rid of leukemia. So at that point, it's again, people think you're so strong, you're going through radiotherapy. Yeah, it's that, or every 2 to 3 years I reawaken the messenger saying, "Hey, I'm back in hospital. Can you support me?" No.
Speaking of the message board, so obviously, you've been supported by this board through both experiences. Was it kind of a pretty much across the board consistent support, or because like I'm trying to convert this a little bit to mental health, because we have this thing in mental health where, well, people are really supportive of your bipolar disorder, unless you're still bipolar 5 years later, which I probably will be, almost certainly will be. Was there any kind of people who were like, "Oh, we've already supported you through this"? Was there anything like that, or was it just positive support?
I'll say it's more in the feedback when I gave news. The first time people were very invested in it and DMing me about questions, about medical things, about how the medical procedures were going, and as if they were trying to learn exactly what was happening to me. The second time, there was also the fact that I wasn't as invested in the messenger because it was hitting so much harder that I had less energy.
Yeah.
I also knew, because for me, chemotherapy in hometown or chemotherapy in Grenoble is still chemotherapy. And I already explained what chemotherapy is. So when I tell people I get another chemo, unless you really weren't listening the first time, it's the same thing. So I'm not going to expand on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I had less feedback from people on the second time, but I don't know if I can pinpoint it to me being less engaging or people being less interested.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to go back to kind of like the what you said earlier. I decided I want to live. I want to live. Now that this has happened twice, are you optimistic or are you pessimistic when you look towards the future? Like, I'm just going to live my life to the best, or are you concerned about it coming back? Are you concerned about your immune system and other things? Also kind of just, I'd be a bit remiss if I didn't mention the fact that during that time, COVID was around, and obviously having a lower immune system was a big point of fear for a lot of people. Anyone that was immunocompromised, like, how does your outlook on things now, given all of that?
Well, speaking about COVID, I saw my my doctor in NC, the one that followed me during my first treatment in November, when COVID was just like a word coming from Asia, but like something vague and still far away. We knew it was threatening, but I told her, I was joking at the time, but it has been proven true up to today. The only time I had to take COVID test was when I entered hospital to make sure I didn't bring COVID into the service.
Mm-hmm. That's
the only time I had to do that. And when I saw her in November before COVID, I was like, no, I decided to skip COVID because I already did leukemia. I'm done with big health problems.
So, go on, sorry.
And so just skipping COVID, at first it was a joke, but I mean, I'm being extremely careful, obviously, but being careful and just skipping COVID was almost natural. But when you're asking if I have a positive outlook on things or not, I'm very sad that I feel like I lost almost 5 years of my life between my 24s and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
due to diverse medical reasons and or global pandemic situation.
Yeah.
But
I mean, at least you lost that time due to shit that was happening to you. I lost a lot of that time because I was just being lazy and not really doing anything.
yeah,
but I understand that. I understand that the the feelings of having lost that period of having lost that period of your life, especially like I work with a lot of neurodiverse people, and there is often that kind of, how would my life, like people often mourn the life that they could have had they've been diagnosed earlier and therefore found coping mechanisms. So it makes a hell of a lot of sense. I was just being silly. So how is the kind of attitude about it moving forward then? So that's obviously looking back, I
still have my projects. I still want to go, and actually it was having projects and things that I was looking for was one of the things that actually helped me pull through the second time. So the second time I fell ill, I was planning on doing around the end of May charity stream to raise funds against leukemia.
Mm-hmm.
I fell ill on May 2nd. So big irony when the day the cameos actually started hit me really hard was the day I was planning on doing the charity stream. So big irony on that, but I still wanted to stream. And so each time I was in hospital, I asked the doctors, providing there's no major medical setback or thing like that, can we have like more or less of a planned calendar of when I'll be out of here?
Yeah.
Because for me, the sterile room was necessary, but it was horrible. I just don't want to get back into a sterile room ever.
Mm-hmm.
And not because of the people. I still visit each time I'm in Grenoble and have time. I go to the 5th C section and I go say hi to the nurses, take news, and someday I'll have to bring them chocolates, by the way. And I was just to thank them because they kept me alive. They kept on treating me as a human being. They kept on listening to me when I needed to vent, to rant, to whatever. They were amazing human beings, and for that I can't thank them enough. So yeah, and now that I'm out, for me when I fell ill the second time, I was like, it wasn't a decision my dad fought, so I'm gonna fight again. It was, if I give up today, I'm spitting on my dad's memory, on the work of the nurses in hometown for the past 2.5 years, and I'm spitting on my plans of having a future.
Yeah. And
again, people say, well, you chose life. Yeah, I had 3 strong arguments to choose life and none against. So it's not even, for me, it was a non-choice.
Were there ever any moments that you didn't want to choose life, though?
I've had times where where I was feeling overwhelmed and I was like, no, just let me slip away, give up, fuck this shit. August this year, it was the worst time because it was my second time in a sterile room. When I came in, both the dietitian, the doctors, the nurses, oh, it's your second stage. Generally, it's shorter. On average, it's 3 weeks. So when the 5th week hit and my marrow still hadn't restarted, admittedly, it was the second time in 3 months that it was being bombarded by chemio. Yeah. So fifth time in its life for heavy treatment. So it had reasons not to start again.
Yeah.
But when I reached the 5th week, it was like, okay, no white blood cells, and I had to wait until week 8 for my blood cells to actually start coming back. That was one point where I was just like, no, just give it up, and I actually was the one asking the doctors, give me meds against depression, antidepressant meds.
Yeah. I think a lot of people a lot of people look at that, and we talked about this with overwhelm a few weeks back when someone said they were overwhelmed by doing very, very little. So the idea of doing anything more just was beyond them. And I actually think this touches on something that you said much, much earlier, which is about kind of like when difficult periods kind of present themselves to people. Often, if someone struggles with what we're told are the basics in life, right? As if everybody has the same basics. But when someone struggles with like the everyday, the day-to-day, what someone who is normal, air quotes for those that are just listening rather than watching, so someone who's normal can handle, it's very easy for people. When we hear someone else's story, we immediately try and think, how would I handle that situation? And I think basically people either go, oh, I'd handle it so well, and they're completely off the scale in one direction, whereas maybe they wouldn't handle it as well as that. But also I think a lot of people think, oh, I can't even handle making sure that my kids have got dry clothes today, like I've been in that position myself. It's like I can't even manage having food in the fridge, therefore I could never handle that. And actually sometimes people who consider themselves weak or incapable in those day-to-day situations, in moments of adversity of that level, they actually do find a strength that they didn't know that was even there. They just and their ability to handle something. It's like, oh, and they'll turn around and be like, oh, actually, it turns out that dealing with that was equally as hard as making sure there was food in the fridge. It's just that you've got this new perspective now.
Yeah.
Has this experience altered your perspective on what is easy and what is difficult in life?
No, but it has changed how I plan and envision things. I need to see. Well, my memory is mostly kinetic. So when you were talking earlier before the interview started, about having a paper calendar, I just had a big smile on my face because my room is filled with scrap paper with diverse writings and things like that.
It's so much better than putting something in digitally. my brain works 10 times quicker like that.
Yeah, my memory is first kinetic and then visual and auditive. You tell me something, if it's not written, I'm just going to forget it. Mm-hmm. Well, I have a good memory, so I probably will remember, but it's not the best way if you want to pass on an info to me.
Yeah.
And I have a Google Calendar because it's easier to just shift things around rather than keeping it on a written list. Mm-hmm. And before I used to be filling my calendar with everything. Like I want to live life at its fullest.
Yeah.
Now I have one full day per week where it's, well, if I didn't do it the rest of the week, well, now could be a time, or just chill, nothing to do. I do now take time for myself. Take time to just say, okay, this is just blank. This is empty. I do whatever I want here, and that's all.
Yeah. I'm very glad to hear that, actually. I'm very glad to hear that. I think we all need that. We all need that time where, forget the kind of the need to be productive all 100% of the time. It's first of all, it burns people out, but secondly, people, when they're not productive, don't know who they are. They don't know, like and if you don't know who you are when you're not doing anything, then you don't really know who you are. You know what you do, and it's not what you do and who you are aren't the same thing. So I'm very happy to hear that. Like that is something that is factored into your schedule now.
When people ask me, what are you doing this weekend? And I tell them, well, Saturdays generally for just cleaning and fixing things around the house. Sunday, I have two objectives. One is go to the market to get fresh fruit and vegetables. Two is to cook for the evening. And sometimes pick up a pile of comics and just read through it over the afternoon. But that's just when I feel like it.
Yeah.
And that's the plan of my weekends. And like people, but you're not doing anything? Yeah, sure. I do one more thing. I play D&D with friends.
Amazing. The one thing I want to actually come back to is not a question. And by the way, chat, we are coming to the end of my questions. So if you want to get any questions from Mastani, please do. But it was something that Emma said earlier, which was, this is extra why I'm glad that you now have time for yourself factored in, is that Emma says, and throughout all of this, Mastani was still there for everyone else, being present, supportive, optimistic. Many of us didn't know how bad it was in the beginning. He never stopped putting others before himself. It's just who he is. And
and that's, Emma, if you're still listening, it's partly true, but it's also partly wrong. When I came back from hospital the first time, so it was it was May 2018, April 2018. That's when I started joining Twitch and watching people's streams, because at that point, video games were very taboo in my family, especially with my dad, for who a screen had to be educative. So a video game is not educative. So
it
basically,
works on your motor skills and your reflexes.
Yeah. No, it's useless. No use in streaming, no use in watching video games and things like that. So I had to fight for a long time before getting even a Game Boy. So at that point, when I was done with my first leukemia, I was like, fuck it. I like video games. I want to watch video games. And so I'm going to watch video games. And it became a habit to listen to streams. When people say, well, what do you do at home? Well, I have streams up in the background. But are you listening and watching them like TV all the time? No. So my family took years to accept that, but watching streams became part of my daily habits. And when I was ill, it was part of staying myself to be able to connect to the hospital Wi-Fi and listen to streams. Even if I wasn't the most active, I would just blip out and just fall asleep during the stream and just come back later to someone else. Part of having people keeping on streaming, requires very little mental energy to follow. And that's one of the things that helped me pull through as well.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So what is, in terms of, I take you stream yourself as well, is that correct?
Yeah, I try. I try to be regular.
we all try. So what is the kind of, what would someone expect from one of your streams?
A calm game, because I'm not into first-person shooters and things like that. That's just not my genre. I really like games that make your brain melt a bit. So Grand Strategy, Europa Universalis is my all-time favorite. It's games that I can pause because if I need to take a break, or just games where I can just stop, think on what's going on, explain what's going on. Basically calm gaming on management strategy games, sometimes buildings, RPGs every once in a while.
Yeah. Basically
any game that I like.
Did you get the chance to get back and do the charity stream, or is that still?
That one has been, well, I was offered to join. I'm joining up with other streamers, not this week, but next week, to do a charity stream for Ukraine. And I contacted one of the associations who had someone who came to visit me at hospital during the second time. Mm-hmm. It was part of I didn't ask for anything, but they had that with the service. And so I want to raise money for them exactly. And I just heard back from them this week. So I told them, well, I already accepted a second project, but I still want to work with you. So unless you're terribly mad at me, I'll do that in October, which is my birthday, the anniversary date of my first leukemia, and technically will be a bit over a year after my marrow transplant, which is what the doctors say you need to fully recover from it. So lots of symbols over there as well, and it'll be a bit further away from the Ukraine charity stream, and hopefully the whole Ukraine war will be over and we'll be back into rebuilding the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And we hope it's over long before then. If someone was listening to this and they've recently received a diagnosis, what would be the most important thing that you think you could say to them?
Stay yourself. Stay yourself. Talk about it, because if you tell people just I'm ill, they'll be like, okay, and then they'll skip on to something else. Tell them what's medically happening to you, how it affects you. When I told people joking with the nurses, I say I'm a pro vomiter. You show me a pouch of chemotherapy, and I'll be the product isn't even plugged in. I'll be throwing my guts away, throwing up my guts and everything just because I saw it. And I know people, they react differently. Some people, they just puts them just entirely to sleep. And so just tell people how it affects you, how tired you are, tell them how you feel. Try and learn how to dig up your emotion and diagnose diagnose or at least speak about your feelings, how you react, how you feel. Many people were like, okay, you're done with treatment, so how are you? And I was like, well, imagine your energy for the day is a battery. You start at 100%. I start every day at 80 because I am exhausted. Not an exhaustion like I just raved overnight and I just need to sleep in more. More like a permanent strain that will go over slowly. Mm-hmm. And imagine that an action takes you 10% of your daily energy. For me, it'll be 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, well, I have no battery. Well, you may still have some left over for the next day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, try to stay yourself as much as you can. Speak about it around you, because people won't be coming to you, sadly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is important to remember as well, is because we always think that, okay, people will reach in, people will check in, people will do all this, and actually quite often we do actually have to make the first move. And I think that's as true with physical health as it is with mental health. I know the two things are treated completely differently, and I know that probably earlier on when you were talking about the level of support that you got from the message board and such, and I think a lot of people in the mental health community, I almost think that, like, when it's something like cancer, that's something that can be beaten, people get behind the person on that a whole lot more than when it's something lifelong and chronic that the person's going to have to live with, And I think, I actually really think people I call it follower fatigue, because I first noticed it on social media, where if you talk about the same thing over and over again, it doesn't matter how important it is to you or whatever, like it can be, your work, it can be your art, it can be people putting up pictures of the kids. If you do the same thing over and over again, people that at first are like, oh, cute kid, or oh, amazing art, or wow, it's really brave of you to talk about this stuff, eventually they're just like, you're talking about that again. And I think it's just a kind of natural human response. But I would say it is kind of often the case that, like, you just don't have an idea. Like, I reached out to a bunch of friends last year when my mental health started like going crap again, and basically when they responded back, a lot of it was saying, here's things that we're actually struggling with too. And like, I just kind of sat there thinking, well, I'm the one with the diagnosed mental health conditions, therefore I'm probably struggling more. And it's like, I didn't even check in with the strong friends or the friends that, that don't ever seem to have any problems. And it is a case of kind of like checking in with everybody, making, well, not, I know everybody seems like it's impossible to check in with everybody, but as many, whoever you have the capacity for that day.
Yeah. You're speaking about people with chronic illnesses. Mm-hmm. People say you're strong to fight cancer. I admire, honestly and deeply, people who go through with chronic conditions, because from day one, I knew my cancer had a start and would have an end. where I know that people with chronic condition, it's never ending. It's never ending, and it's a struggle. It's a daily struggle that they'll have for their entire life. And for that, I just tip my hat to you who have that and who struggle with that. And I admire you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if someone hasn't clipped that, I mean, I've just done it personally to make sure it gets done, because that is an extremely powerful and extremely humble thing that Mastani's just said there. Is there anything else that my questions haven't led you towards that you think is important to say?
Not that I think of right now. If chat has any questions or anything, don't hesitate.
They've been remarkably quiet. Apparently, they've all been listening with bated breath today. But there's still, unless I've missed them completely or they've not been highlighted, there isn't any. So what I'll do is give them a chance to get any other questions in. I'll just ask you, where's the best place to find you and connect with you on socials?
Twitter. It would be my Twitter. I'm just gonna pull it up for you.
I had the number a minute ago. 2110, is it? No.
Yes.
Is it 2110?
Yes.
I remembered. That's a miracle. Mastani 2110. Yeah, there we go. So twitter.com/Mastani, which is Mastani 2110. So yeah, go over and check him out.
21's my birthday and 10 is the month. They told me I could choose a personal number. Well, there you go. Take a personal number.
Amazing. Right.
Which ironically is also the day on which Mathias Malzieu, the author I spoke about a bit earlier, was transplanted for his marrow.
Oh, right. On your birthday?
Yeah. 2014 for him.
So what was the name of that book again?
Diary of a Vampire in Pajamas.
Diary of a Vampire in Pajamas. I knew it was. I remember the words vampire and I remember the word pajamas, but I didn't remember the rest. But it's quite a memorable title. So yeah, I'm just gonna thank.
Here's the link on Amazon for whoever wants it. It's
sorted. Amazing. So I'm just going to thank you very much for joining me, and I'm just going to read a couple.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're very, very welcome. To anyone who's listening to the audio podcast, there'll be an abrupt end right now. Boom. For the video wise, I'm just going to read out a couple of comments. Really, One Fallen Phoenix just said that was just such a strong statement, and thank you about talking about like chronic illness like that. One Fallen Phoenix says, I haven't been here for the whole thing. And actually, we actually haven't necessarily spoken about this so much, but what helped you the most through your cancer journey?
Both people coming and asking for news when I wasn't posting any, and both people keeping on going on their normal lives and posting, acting with me as if I wasn't ill. When I went back to volleyball training, my friends were just happy just to say, hey, come in with us and just come in, participate. And whenever if you need to get out for a while, just get out for a while. For several trainings, I was just not the coach because I don't have the abilities yet, but I was like, yeah, we're going to practice attack. So we need someone just to hold a ball like that for people to come hit. That I can do. Yeah. Doing the jumping and hitting, I can't, but just holding the ball up so people can jump, I can do that. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think that is really just latching into what can I do rather than what can't I do. Because I remember a guy when I used to go to Muay Thai and he broke his ankle by going over on it, like missing a kick one day. And I remember he used to come in on the cast and sit and watch everyone train. And I thought at the time, I'm like, I don't know if I could do it personally because I'd just be sat there like feeling like I'm missing out or whatever. And I spoke to him about it. I'm like, I said to him, I feel like, if I was sat there, I said, it's dead impressive that you keep on coming to do this. And he was all like, look, it's like I'm just absorbing things. So when it's time to come back, I'll know people's movement a bit better. I'll have picked up some of the things. I'll have learnt some of the combos. And then when it comes to time to trying them out, he's like, I'll have known them. And he's like, I'm just focusing on what I can do. And that's something I often say to my audience is focus on what you can do, what you can't, especially in these times. Especially right now, we're bombarded every single day with with things that we can't change or we can't impact. And it when you only focus on the things that you can't impact, it becomes very disempowering. Whereas if you focus on what you can, and give yourself that credit for like, okay, I am starting over here. So, and if I do this is at least a step towards it, because so many people actually do, when it comes to starting over, just be like, I can't be bothered doing this again because I've got to go through all of that to get to there. And I get it, because it's, you didn't know how big the mountain was when you started learning volleyball back in the day. Now you kind of know what what the difference is between where you are now and where you want to be.
Yeah.
But walking away from it is the way to guarantee that you'll never get there. Whereas, and that, by the way, actually, is just as difficult as the difficulty that of getting back involved and working your way back up. It's just a different kind of difficulty, and it's delivered in a different method. The difficulty on the way back up is the difficulty of the task that's in front of you. The difficulty of walking away is the delayed difficulty of regret.
Yeah, very well said.